I'm Brigitte Anderson, English professor, longtime resident of Pikeville and longtime employee at the University of Pikeville. I will tell you that I've been here 32 years and I'm proud of that. So I'm still here and I'm part of the history. This university is 130 years old right now. I'm almost there, but Mom got to be 89 and I'm certainly shooting for 90. Still have energy and still going strong like that Energizer Bunny.
And after a lot of years, you challenged yourself to be a learner again, and recently, in the last couple of years, you earned a different type of degree. Which degree did you earn?
Well, let me go back to that. I have always striven to learn something every day. Now, I don't manage to do that every day, but I have always tried to have an open mind. I don't have an open mind on everything, but have an open mind to new knowledge. I want to learn. There's so much that is exciting about being on this planet, about being here, and ideally I want to know it all and put the pieces together. So I have in many ways always envied my students. Really envied them, because for 4 years of their life, and I remember my years of that time as an undergraduate, you really don't have anything to worry about but learning. You don't, well, maybe doing the laundry, but your food is being prepared, your room is right there, you don't have to make a mortgage payment, you don't have to make a car payment, you don't have to take the garbage out, you don't have to do any of that what later on restricts us in life, ties us down. No American home with the garage and the 2.5 children and the picket fence. So those are the years of freedom. And I've always envied my students who look at that schedule for the next semester and they can pick and choose and learn. And as a matter of fact, years ago, I can't remember if you were here then already, with, I can't remember her first name, but Maria Italiano. She taught Spanish, even though she had an Italiano, her last name. And I decided I was going to learn Spanish. I had Latin in high school for 9 years, French in high school for 5 years, so I didn't think it would be that difficult. Well, it lasted 1 semester. It was difficult because I had to take the test and had to learn the vocabulary, and I just decided, no, this is not the time in life. But I've always searched for enriching myself. I never wanted to just stagnate. And I think part of that, then at age 58, I looked around and I thought to myself, well, I've been in that humanities bubble my entire life. I've earned a master's in English, a master's in German, and then that PhD in English, and I've really always just dreamed. But I was able to avoid the hard facts of life, which is why my husband always jokes. He's a man who doesn't understand why anybody would read fiction. It's all made up, so why would you want to read that? So I decided I needed to expose myself and challenge myself to a totally new environment, to a totally new learning plane. And the university offers the MBA. In those days it was still 2 years and face-to-face. And I really wanted the face-to-face. I wanted to be in a classroom with young people who are starting their career, who are looking at life, who are looking uphill, whereas I'm looking downhill, and I wanted to be learning with them. So my colleague Andrew Reed, who is a full generation younger than I am, and I, who had never really collaborated, but in that environment we just clicked and we became an excellent learning team. We complement each other, so that the entrepreneurship program picked up on us. We were able to and encouraged to, as old fogies, to compete in one of those Shark Tanks, the Kentucky State Entrepreneurship competitions. And lo and behold, this old woman was able to compete. I had panic attacks. I was nervous. It was so good for me to be in the shoes of my students again. I learned what they go through when they have to give a public speech. And that's what we had to do. Timed 7 minutes, give that pitch. Well, we gave that pitch and we gave it several times and we ended up winning monetary prizes, and we looked at each other and we thought, wow, we can do this. It was so rewarding. It felt so good, and then we became best friends with the two Caitlins. I think it was the best time of my last professional 5 years, because I could dive into numbers. I had never had a statistics course, an undergraduate statistics course. I'm a humanities person. I don't need to do that. So I had to take graduate statistics. Well, what do? Brigitte, you take a deep breath, you calm down, you call mom, which I couldn't do anymore. And so then I thought, well, there's YouTube. Husband Steve goes to YouTube for everything. Something is broken in the house, YouTube will have the answer. Well, YouTube had lots of answers for graduate statistics. I learned there's Khan Academy. I learned there are other tutorials. I went to Kate and asked her. So I found answers. And it was so good to not only learn statistics, that's besides the point, but to know I can find ways to get this done without feeling helpless, without feeling dependent, without feeling stupid. It was very, very eye-opening, built confidence I may not have had in that arena. I learned about bitcoins, I learned about whether or not my retirement will suffice, all the way around. And I learned that numbers talk. Numbers tell stories. So I saw a connection between business and the humanities that I'd never seen before. You know, when these statistical curves go up and down, there are stories there. There are reasons for that to happen. And it was wonderful. So I may never use that MBA. But the results, the impact it has had, the learning has had on my life, and it wasn't always easy. I had a full-time job. I had, issues at the house, which I pretty much take care of by myself because Steve traveled so much. So having to be in class two nights every week, and then serious deadlines because all these courses were only 8 weeks long. Put a damper on life's plans, but the investment of time, energy, nerves, sweat was well worth it. I'm not saying I'm ready to learn Chinese, but I stretched myself and it felt oh so good.
That's inspirational to really challenge and continue to grow as a learner. So obviously learning and higher education has been a huge part of your life and journey. But as a kid, what did you want to do as a kid?
Oh, I can tell you what I wanted to do as a kid, because both Grandma and Mom, for my 6th birthday, gave me what they do in Germany. They have these chalkboards that stand up, and they actually rotate so that you can teach 2 lessons at the same time. So for my birthday, I think it was the 6th or the 7th, both Grandma and Mom gave me, well, Mom and Dad, of course, gave me one of these big chalkboards, because all along I had been teaching school without a chalkboard, and all my dolls were set up like that. I had a little grade book, and I was teaching. And so all along I knew I was eventually going to teach. My cousin suffered from this fancy of mine, because every time we got together, which wasn't that often, but when, and we were both playing, I didn't know this word, I called it a flute, but apparently Americans call it a recorder. I had a wooden, I always called it flute or a flute, but anyways, it's a recorder, very simple to play. But she was not musical, and she certainly didn't want to be told by her 10-month older cousin how to do this. But every time we got together, I was, well, Petra, let's play the recorder, and then I will teach you. So I was always teaching somehow, and I think it had to do with skipping my childhood. I never had a childhood, or maybe I still have my childhood, but I'm an only child. I was always around adults. There were no kids in the neighborhood. I never talked baby talk. I came to this planet like an 8-pound adult. And so From then on, it went downhill, right? So, no, I've always envisioned I'd be in the classroom one day. Now, once I graduated from high school, I decided, well, maybe because I'm now bilingual, by then I had been an exchange student to America, maybe I should do something with languages, and I wanted to be an interpreter. Found out can't do that unless you have 3 languages and are fluent in them. Then I decided I was going to go to an American law school and be one of those law and order types in a pretty suit, high heels, look authoritative, and have that perfect haircut. Well, you will never believe this, Rob, but it was during Reagan's time. I took the LSAT, the American LSAT. Now, mind you, I was living in Germany. I was invited to take it at the American Embassy in Cologne on a Saturday morning. I had one of the Marines was standing over me, watching me, because I was the only one taking it, and it, was before the internet, so it was all in writing. I took the LSAT, may have been the only person in Germany taking the LSAT, and it was actually a decent score. It was reputable. But what nobody had told me is that an education costs money in this country. So I woke up to the rude awakening that no way I could ever pay for it. And that dream died right there and then. So, and then I have another story to tell. Then I applied with a German academic exchange service. Very, very prestigious. It's kind of like the Marshall Program. And my dad repeated what he had said when I was 15, and I applied for my year overseas. Mind you, a little German town. This was 1974. No child had ever gone overseas for a year. And years later, my mom told me that Dad said, "Oh, let her apply. She won't get accepted anyway." So I. Maybe that was his wishful thinking, but of course I was accepted. And then the German Academic Exchange Service also accepted me because maybe I was tolerant enough of Americans. But guess what? They placed me in. I had this grand vision. I would end up in civilization with an English program, right? They placed me. You've probably not heard of this place, but it does exist. It's on the map. Walla Walla, Washington. I can still hear myself say that, and my dad frowning and thinking. I could see what he was thinking. He was thinking, no, my little Brigitte is not going there. But I checked out that school, and they specialized in outdoor programs. There was nothing English. So with a heavy heart, I turned down that scholarship, and my life would be entirely different had I gone to Walla Walla, Washington. And lo and behold, years later, my professor calls me up one evening and he says, "Well, Brigitte," he says, we are connected with a German-American friendship exchange, and this year's scholarship recipient has to back out at the last minute, and we couldn't think of anyone. Would you be willing to accept this graduate scholarship? But you have to leave immediately. Well, immediately was within the 2 weeks. And I said, well, I have to think about it. I didn't even ask where to. And I was thinking about this. And by that time, my undergraduate in Germany was about to be completed. And Mom said, well, you've been there once before. You can find your way around. You speak English. And we can foot the bill if it needs to be. So I ended up in Bowling Green, Ohio. And I learned once I came to Kentucky that Kentucky is Bowling Green, and in Ohio it's Bowling Green. Wood County, the flattest county of the state of Ohio, and by golly, it was flat and cold, and ice cold the first year. But I learned about saunas. So that first winter in Bowling Green, Ohio was so cold that they closed the county and you were only allowed to drive if you had a medical emergency. But I learned, because I didn't have a car, that it was absolutely wonderful to attend my graduate classes in the evening and then swing by that huge rec center with an Olympic-sized pool and go to the sauna. And I would be sitting in that sauna with 100-some degrees, 120 degrees, and I would sweat out all my worries. It was lovely. It was lovely. And, might I add, in terms of cultural experience and learning and opening my eyes, what we said earlier, learning to me is so much more than academic learning. I was this little person from Germany. I arrived with 2 suitcases. I still have one of them. I had to find my own accommodations. The graduate student housing was helpful. And I ended up living in an apartment that was completely furnished by an African-American recent graduate of the university who was now an elementary school teacher. Well, Rob, let me tell you, I had never been that near or close to an African-American person of any gender. You know, I'd gone to school in California, but the neighbors were all Asian or Hispanic. So I lived with an African-American young woman who was getting married, planning to get married, who had never been near a little German person, and she used to play basketball. She was about 30 centimeters taller than I, and she would always look down on me and she would say, "Little Bridget." And little Bridget and tall Carmela and I, we had the most wonderful time that year. She had grown up in Cleveland and told me that up to 1st grade she had never seen a Caucasian or anyone not her race. So for her, living with someone from Germany who was eating different stuff, weird stuff, who had never seen a dishwasher, I'd never seen a dishwasher, was eye-opening to her and to me. But we became such good friends that she actually included me in her wedding. It was the most fascinating thing. I lost touch with her, sadly, but it was such an amazing year. Just to see the world with Carmela's eyes at 6 feet. Yeah.
That's incredible. What great stories.
Yes.
The you know, as you share about your life and these many years, obviously you still have some ambitions and dreams out there. And is there a dream job that you have out there?
I would love to do something on which I'm even an area, an arena that challenges me in areas I haven't been challenged. There is a reason, now that I've been in the classroom for 32 years, there is a reason why public school teachers retire or have the opportunity to retire after 25 years. Teaching wears you out. Because if you take it seriously, it's so much more than prepping for class, delivering knowledge, going home and grading papers. Essentially, if you take it seriously, you live the lives of your students. You try to figure out where they want to go in life, try to mentor, try to guide them, share a little bit of what you did right and did wrong. But I think because I never had siblings, I want to reach out and I want to help and guide and teach all the time, 24/7, and that drains you emotionally. So in my wildest dreams, I have this notion of having a career in which I only answer to myself. I don't know what that may be, but be more dependent on myself, be more reliant on myself, then I will have to blame myself for the lows and maybe enjoy the highs more. You know, but teaching also means restrictions. You're in a system. If you work for a state school or a public school, high school, you're even more restricted. So at least we choose our materials. Even when I teach English 200, I can change the texts every semester. This semester I'm teaching English 111 without a textbook completely. So it's not like we have to follow rules all the time, but I envision that if I do something completely on my own, I have complete freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of what I would like to do, if I still have the energy then. Because I've always told myself, and I really believe that, Bob, and I'm willing to pay the price. If I ever wake up one morning and I don't want to go to work, it's time to find something else. And I think I would make a good Chico's or Talbot's salesperson. Although my good friends tell me, no, I wouldn't, because I would impose my taste on everyone. No, this really doesn't look good on you. So yes, I think I'm ready for a third life. Mm-hmm. And I wish that on my students. I want them to have 20 lives.
Mm-hmm. Ever evolving, changing, growing, learning further. Yeah, when we talk about that, oftentimes things happen in life that spur us onto a new path. It's like, okay, the new section of my journey. Did anything happen in life that really helped you kind of understand that this is your path or your journey?
I think I always knew I'd like to teach because I like to explain and I like to find a shortcut to knowledge. And I know for a fact that the first year of my teaching was absolutely horrible because I treated undergraduate students like graduate students. That's where I was coming from. That was my most recent memory. So why don't they get it? And I had to really reassess, I've gone to school. I was 29 by the time I had my degree. My dad was worried I'd never leave college, and I never did. Look, I'm still here. So it was a lousy reassessment, because what if it hadn't been my right choice? What do you do with an English PhD? I mean, really, and you already have your first job, and you're so happy that you have a job because 899 other people don't have it, So I puckered up. I learned patience, and I'm still learning patience. And I forced myself to put myself into my students' shoes, and I'm still doing that. And once I had that light bulb go off, it's not about the teaching, it's not about the T, it's about the L, it's about the learning. That's when I could do better. That's when I could be a better teacher. That's when I could be, and that's what I do now. I flip the classroom. I ask students to present the material, because you and I know from tutoring, which is why every student should really be a tutor at some point, a peer tutor. If you can explain it, you know it. So to me, it's all a matter of perspective. And once I can grab it as a student, then I can deliver it accordingly. And once I had that light bulb go off, but it wasn't in my first year of teaching, sailing was much smoother.
So now when you think about your life, you're a person who's studied words, you're an avid reader. If we were to put your life's call into a sentence, how would you do that?
Calling sounds very pretentious. I'm not at that level. But because I have always felt two lives in me, I was very young, but an adult when I left Germany, and the first years of your life are so formative. I have always felt like I'm a good candidate at bridging cultures, at explaining to my German friends and relatives, well, Americans do it this way because there's a reason, and vice versa. So I've always really tried. I felt this need to create that understanding and to create that bridge, and not to have everybody think that Germany is all about drinking beer in the Oktoberfest, even though it's about to start next week. And I think that's where I'm most comfortable in translating cultures, in creating understanding. And really, Germany is being flooded by refugees now who have a different religion, who speak a different language, and Germans are struggling with that. They're a monolithic culture. I've never felt that way in this country. I went to high school in California, and everybody in the neighborhood was Filipino, Japanese, of Japanese descent. It was wonderful. So I've learned in America, as an American, that people are people, but that they bring to the table a different background, and it's a fascinating background. And I love to sit and learn and hear people's stories and how they came from there to here, what triggered things, what gets them going, what makes them laugh, and those things differ. The Germans are perfectly happy when everything is structured, ordered, and predictable. That was the generalization and the stereotype for the day. But by and large, that's true. Germans don't cross the street when there's a red light and no car visible for the next 200 miles. After all, it's a red light. Okay? In this country, I'm very comfortable crossing the street with a red light when there's no car coming, and I'm willing to pay the price, pay the ticket if there is one. So it's just fascinating why some people are happy living this lifestyle and other people are happy living that lifestyle. And observing it all is great reason to chuckle. You know, people are reason. I think we all have a sense of humor because it allows us to live with other people, understand them, and give them some leeway. You know, we all have a bad day, you know? And so, but I'm happy to be somewhere, I think, in Greenland or Iceland with my cultures. I'm half American, half German. I like to pick the best of both worlds, combine that in me, and ignore the worst of both worlds. I will never eat fast food. Never. Nope, not coming my way. There, I said it, I mean it. I will never treat a car like it's an extension of my living room couch and put mascara on while I'm driving. No, it's not going to happen. Mercedes had its biggest problems marketing Mercedeses in this country because there were no cup holders. Germans do not drink or eat or do anything when they're driving. It's a serious business. You drive. You know, why would you be doing anything else? So, certain things I will never do while I'm here. I will never do while I'm there. And I'm perfectly happy. I made many right choices. I made many bad choices. After all, I'm remarried. But you go on. There's no need to look back. Life is too short. And I'm doing my very best. I think that's also part of my calling. And I know people laugh about me and at me. I don't mind. I really try to model and to live a healthy lifestyle, because I know tragedy can strike. I mean, vegetarians have colon cancer. People who have never smoked have lung cancer. So I understand all that, but there is a degree to which we can contribute to a healthy living and a long life, and that part I want to do, and that part I would like to do. I would like all my loved ones to do, because I want to have them travel this journey with me as long as I possibly can. I intend to be 100 and not sitting around moping and groping and moaning about the cafeteria food in the nursing home. I intend to be alive and kicking, as I am now, alive and kicking. But I know it requires energy, and I need to do my part, and I'm willing to do that part. And if other people laugh about it when Ruby and I walk our 4 miles, that's just fine with me. I can be Teflon coated. So I don't know. This was a 10-minute response to your question about calling. I'm very comfortable with where I am, and I'm hoping I can still translate cultures for the next 30 years. Yes.
Well, as you've been doing this and teaching and inspiring and advising, you have been a very inspirational person to people, whether as an administrator or as an instructor or professor. But who inspired you to know that this was what your life was about?
That's easy. My grandmother. You probably need to cut this off in about 2 hours. I know you have a family to go to. My grandmother was born in 1901. She lived through the First World War, had lots of siblings, the way people did then, and very unusual for a woman of her age, didn't marry very young. I mean, you were married at age 19. Well, she had her first love, the man she was engaged to, die in World War I. So that set her off her course, and she decided she was on her own. The course she had charted was all of a sudden erased. Well, she had a backbone. I am really Grandma reincarnated. We have a lot in common. She decided, and nobody in her generation had ever done that. She didn't speak a foreign language. She packed up a suitcase and she went to Holland, country next door. Wasn't very far for an American perspective. But she apprenticed herself to a cook, a professional cook in Holland, learned professional cooking, for big families, and she became a live-in cook. Think of Downton Abbey, that same situation, with an aristocratic Dutch family. They had huge plantations in the Philippines, very, very rich people, and she learned class. She learned manners, she learned wonderful cooking, she learned about foreign spices, and for those days, she was miles and miles away from family. She was really on her own. That had never happened before. So by the time she then had found her second love, her first love's brother, and was engaged again, her family, the family she worked for, had come to value her so much that they didn't really want her to get married and leave them. They made her an offer to go to the Philippines with them, to their plantations, rubber plantations, and she turned them down. She said no, that wasn't for her. But they gave her the most beautiful, really thin porcelain tea set from the Philippines. It's so thin that when you hold it against the light you can see through, and I have that now. So she was kind of the big role model. She plowed the path so that when I was age 16, as an only child, I struck out on my own, and I went to California for that 1 year. In those days, I arrived in August, and the first time I could have a phone conversation with my mother was Christmas with my parents, because it was too expensive. It was $9 a minute. My parents couldn't afford that. And you still had to go through an operator for a transatlantic call. So, to put that in perspective, I really was a little bit on my own. As a matter of fact, by the time the year was over, I hadn't had a chance to speak German to anyone, and I found it very difficult to speak German again when I ended up in Germany. Yes. So grandmother was the one who, when I was on my exchange year, she wrote a letter, airmail letter with red and blue. Every Saturday I had a letter from grandmother in the mailbox. Even if nothing had happened, she had to write me a letter, and she was just such a doll. She insisted to fly. She wanted to be on an airplane once in her lifetime. And I said, Grandma, we can do that. So we picked a city, Berlin, and Grandma and I was 20-something, we flew to Berlin. She was the proudest woman on this planet, and she was always prim and proper. She puckered up. She had this little 100% leather handbag, this nice little coat with the mink, and she sat there, hat, and she was going to fly to Berlin. 50-minute flight, tourist class, but by golly, she got to fly with her granddaughter. And that was conversation for the next 5 years at every family gathering. Yes, inspiration.
Wow.
So even though I don't have kids, but I think if you haven't had them, you're not missing them. You only know you're missing something when you've had it. So I'm not going as far as saying my students are my kids, but over the years, I have acquired such a solid family, real friends who are much younger than I am. And my mom did the same thing. She had a lot of friends younger than she was, who keep me alive, who keep me striving, who give me hope for the future of the planet, who stay in touch, who check in with me even when it's not a birthday or Christmas, that I feel, even though I haven't had children and I'm not passing on DNA, I'm passing on something, and it wasn't a wasted life on this planet, I can rest at peace with that. I can.
You've mentioned even these students now that who call or check in and are carrying a little bit of you with inside of them, right? And when you've made such an impact on people, and clearly you can see you've helped change their life or impact their life forever. You've had other students who've come in and just maybe had no clue about what they're supposed to do. Especially students come from the mountains and just know they're supposed to go to college, but they don't know anything else, right? So when you have students like that who don't really know what they're supposed to do or what they feel called to do, what advice do you have for them?
Those are the perfect students. They're such lovely creatures. I can have the most wonderful conversation with them, whereas the conversation with, I want to be a neurosurgeon, are much different and much more difficult for me. But students who arrive here who have obviously made the decision, I'm going to bring the sacrifice of money, time, energy, often leaving home, to change my life, to strengthen my position here and now and in the future and for my children. But I don't really know how to do that yet. Those people are so open-minded that they're really perfect for, and I hate to make that pitch, but I'm making it, for a liberal arts school. It's a smorgasbord. Take a class in everything that offers itself, because you may not know that you have an opera voice. You may not know that you're the perfect Van Gogh. You may not know any of those things. I can't remember his name, but this one student, the football player who had never been on stage and now sings on stage and is minoring in theater, that kind of I don't know what to do with myself can so easily translate into I don't know what to do with myself, but because I don't know, I'm open to it all. And that's the best position to be in. If you want to be a neurosurgeon on day one, you've already put up the walls. You're not going to be taking X, Y, and Z because it's not on the fast track to med school, you know? So the people who don't know, I think, are in a good position.